you have probably seen before. You're probably curious on how these scenarios, these future scenarios take place. So this time, Envisioning will be sharing our full methodology. And welcome everybody who is already here.
Joining. So yeah, let's keep the QR code up. I'll keep sharing the link within the chat, so you can also click through. And I see most people are already using it, and that'll be a huge interactive bit. And we can. I suggest we wait another 2 minutes or so for a few more people to join. But and I'm going to repeat the previous instructions, which is we're inviting each and every participant in as a panelist, which means you can switch on your camera. You don't have to. But more importantly, you can also switch on your audio so we can hear you more easily. So we're going to do some interactive bits throughout. Hi, Alan.
Yeah. And don't log out from your phone, from this QR code, because we will use this throughout the whole session, including the last part of it. See if it works.
Well, I'm an hour north of New York City.
Hey. And Michelle, just let me know when we should start. And
say 1 more minute.
Yeah,
we start 5 over.
Wait for the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm literally like clicking in people all the time. So it's like popcorn. Like when there's 2 seconds between each pop, you stop. Take it off the oven. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, Julie. Nice seeing you guys.
Morning.
Alex is joining us. Morning, afternoon, evening.
Is anyone speaking from Barcelona here? No.
The Barcelonites.
Just me.
Yeah, so we're 5 minutes in. We have some people still joining. I'll keep the people coming in as panelists, and you guys run the show.
Ciao. So welcome everybody.
Okay, you go. I was gonna say we introduce ourselves first, and then so let's do that. I'm Rodrigo. I'm from São Paulo, but I live in Amsterdam for about 3 years, and I'm a senior researcher at Envisioning for almost 2 years. And yeah, I was gonna introduce Envisioning, but you'll understand what Envisioning is as this session goes.
Great suggestion.
Yeah, I'm Michell Zappa. I'm founder and CEO of Envisioning, and I want to thank you so much for being part of the UNESCO Futures Literacy Summit, and in particular this session. We've been running a bunch of sessions throughout the summit. We're about halfway through now. There's still about a dozen left between today and tomorrow. And you're going to be in the very capable hands of Laura, our editor-in-chief, and Thiara, our head of research.
Yes. Hey, everybody. Thank you and welcome to UNESCO's Future Literacy Summit. You are listening to an Envisioning session now. I'm the head of research at Envisioning, and I've prepared this quick presentation about our methodology, and I want to pass the microphone to Lara, which is our chief editor. And I really hope you enjoy it. We did it with a lot of care and love. Hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Thiara, for the introduction. I'm Laura del Vecchio. I'm from Brazil, but I live in Barcelona. I am the current editor-in-chief from Envisioning. It's a pleasure to see you all here, and I will guide you through all steps we pass through when we perform the research process, and I hope you enjoy it. And okay, so we can get started. So Where are you based? You can use the app. So you just simply answer. I will try by myself again. Okay, France, Cape Town. So many places, all right. London, Sao Paulo. Great. Updating and updating.
Amazing. Berlin, Scotland, Porto, Austria, Lebanon.
Lebanon.
So
Brussels.
global. This is super cool.
Yes. Yes. That's great. Okay. So how do you feel about the future? There is no wrong answer. You can answer depending on, yes, all right? So there is a tiny percent frightened. Both, okay, I see. Optimistic, there's no wrong answer. So do you believe the future is accelerating? Not really, a lot. So it's decreasing considerably, a bit. All right. All right. Okay, so it's quite diverse. So do you believe technology is a key driver for these changes? Again, no wrong answers. Wow. Okay. Sure. Nope. It's tiny fraction. Maybe. Great. Okay, so now we can start with how we create these scenarios. So many hots. That's great to see. Okay, so what is Envisioning? Envisioning is it's a research institute in the first global platform that gathers emerging technologies, and it's collaborative, and all researchers and people involved in the process, they have access to all these technologies. And we want to create methods and ways for people to get interested with this technology as a way to create novel futures and ways to understand how reality and how we access these futures and possibly democratize futures thinking. Okay. We are global. We are distributed in so many countries, and we are working together remotely. And this is one of our bases, because when we look at the future, we want to create different ways and different methods to create these narratives. And being based in so many different places is a key future for us. So this is the one of just a piece of our radar. And we can look at this. The radar is a visualization tool that gathers emerging technologies. And if you click in any of these technologies displaying here, you will have access to information about these technologies. So for example, if you click on ambulance drone, you will have access to a short description, to a summary, describing briefly what this technology is. Then you will have access to a full description giving details of how it works and the possible impacts and the future perspectives related to this technology. Also, you can count with some sources, references related to this technology, and also the metrics. And the metrics are the way how we measure the impact of these technologies, from the sustainability impact to how this technology is developed. So when you look at the technologies, the closer they are to the center, the most developed they are. They are being fixed and applied to reality. And the further they are located at the radar, as you can see, they are not that developed. They are closer to the idea, they are closer to the concept, they are closer to idea, and not as a prototype or a product. And then you can see that we have different ways of gathering these technologies, which means we relate technologies into affinity groups. These technologies, they create groups of relationship. So it can both be taxonomic, which means the technologies are related by industries. For example, we can gather all technologies related to additive manufacturing, but in this case, this is a scenario. So it's more related to a trend. So what are the technological objects that helped drive this trend forward? So here we have, for example, the political aspects and the social aspects. So there is a question here. Okay, so it's our team of researchers that they work with the metrics, and they work on how to measure and leverage these impacts. Yes. Okay. So the methodology. Okay, we can go with this, and I think we can go with the premise, which is, I think, the biggest question that you may ask, and I think we can go. So what is technology? I think this is the first question that you may ask, because as we forecast emerging technologies, it's really difficult to define the concept of technology itself. So we can use some already fixed ideas. So technology is definitely created by humans to solve some problems, but also we can use technology as a tool to create other ways to understand our problems, and maybe sometimes create others. And emerging technologies, of course, they help us understand social changes, and as an instrument that assists society in achieving many objects and many goals, technology is for sure not just an instrument or a tool, but also an asset that give us ways to see how the impact of our actions, they can have long-term consequences and effects. This is a really good one. Technologies don't die, they evolve, because as we believe that sometimes technologies, they may stagnate on time, but they evolve all the time, which means that they can be embedded with novel techniques, they can be embedded with other features and other ways to make these technologies work. And this is a good way to look at the instruments we have in our hands. For example, we have a smartphone. This smartphone may, in the future, stagnate throughout time, but it may stagnate, but this doesn't mean that it's not going to evolve. This is not going to develop and change. So we can go with technology mapping. So when we do the technology mapping, we take a lot of references. Science fiction and technological development have always gone hand in hand. So every technology begins as an idea, some spring from academic insights, while others can be found in science fiction works. From the moment of their creation, every single technology begins as a journey towards becoming a social reality, a product or a system that can be used by people across the globe. The art of imagining fictional scientific tools and turning them into a story goes together with the harnessing of science fiction ideas that can or may not be used by the scientific community later. It is hard, in my opinion, to point out where the loop starts or ends, and where if technology starts on the idea of when we are already building a tool. We can go. And then we would like to do this exercise with you. So we have these 5 technologies. I can give you some context on them. So the vertical farm is a Uber farm equipped with an irrigation system. lighting, solar panels, and other equipment used to grow organic and pesticide-free foods in indoor environments. So then we have the blockchain notary. It's a blockchain-based service that anonymously secures and stores an online distributed proof of existence for any documents. It helps create a digital fingerprint that it's easily traceable while also adding a layer of security, improving data ownership. So then we have the drone highway with multiple lanes, is a highway structured with the sections at grades placed above and below ground level for drones to fly. And then we have the robot police. The robot police, followed by its name, it's a robot equipped with machine vision, sensors and cameras, trained to handle tasks initially given to human police officers. And then finally, we have anti-surveillance fashion, which is a business model. It's a model of using this tech. It's makeup, fashion, accessories, and apparel, designed to specifically cheat unwanted monitoring surveillance systems, like microphones, cameras, facial recognition software. So in your opinion, okay, so vertical farm is the ones that the most relevant. Okay, I think we can move forward. Okay, anti-surveillance fashion, more. Nice. Nice.
And Laura, may I jump in for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, I would just like to highlight that this is an exercise much like the ones we do at Envisioning, because we do have a database of emerging technologies in which we access in order to create these future scenarios and these future visions. So what you're doing here is much like what we do at Envisioning, picking technologies for a determined context and putting them into question to understand what is going to be their capability and their ability to change the world in the future.
Thank you, Thiara. Okay, so what you're seeing here, it's a collection of one of these emerging technologies that we did this hands-on exercise now. So this is basically what we have, our technology database. So our technology database is a repository for emerging technologies that it's a proprietary, it's for Envisioning. And here we gather a lot of emerging technologies related to some industries and sectors, and all of them, they count with a full description, similar to the radar, to the visualization that we showed to you previously. And they count also with organizations, the organizations related to their developments, and the sources. The sources are the spring for the creation of these emerging technologies. They give us ways to find their names, to find the people involved on their developments, and it's a great place for us. Also, not just to add more information, but also for consulting, to checking out whatever we did in the past months, and to evaluate how these technologies are being developed and how they are behaving according to the future and the present, especially.
And just a quick view here, this is going to be our new database. So what you're seeing is what you're using now, but this is what we've been developing throughout the past few months, which is going to be published in a few months.
Okay, so technology readiness level. Currently, Envisioning's quantitative data analysis is based on TRL, commonly known as technology readiness level. It's a type of assessment originally created by NASA to evaluate space technologies. And Envisioning has adapted it in order to make the evaluation easier and fit into our technology definition, which rates technology from 1 to 9, but based on the idea, concept, prototype, and product. Okay. So how could you rate the stage of development of the technologies you choose previously. Robot, police.
Which is vertical farm, right? I think the
Yeah,
most voted was vertical farm.
Yes, yes. Okay. Right, product. Okay, product.
It's interesting to see a vertical farm was also the technology that Brazilians have chosen. Actually, people who speak Portuguese, which were in our last session, which was in Portuguese, they also picked vertical farms. However, their stage of development was around 6. So you guys basically are on the same range here.
That's interesting. For 2 different languages in 2 different places having the same opinion, it's curious. Okay, so here you have access to how to understand the creation of this division we did previously, the idea, the concept, prototype, and product. So the range that this rank from 1 to 9, the higher the ranking, the more the technology is technically developed. The TRL is part of a quantitative data analysis method based on data that can be objectively measured with numbers. So it could be understood as a metric to understand how fictional or how real is the relationship between science fiction and scientific fact of the technological objects we use. So here you can find from the idea, concept, prototype, and product, the different rates that you can give to the technological objects depend on how they behave, if they're already being fixed or used, or if they are still in concept and prototypes or even ideas.
And a cool thing is that it's not only about the rate that we give them. So if they are 1, if they are 9, if they are 3.51, the most interesting thing to see, I guess, is the how we can compare technologies using that. Because since we have a common database of technologies, while where we describe every single technology in the same fashion, using the same metric, we are able to compare them and create this analysis, which help people make better decisions about the future of their companies or even their lives or the societies they live in.
And it's also, I remember like in some projects that our clients ask us, oh, please bring technologies above a certain TRL. So it's also a way for us to help us show them technologies that are closer to being able to being implemented.
Yeah, for sure. Or when they, for example, tell us they want to understand how the future of cities is going to be on 2030, it's very different if it's going to be 50 years from now. So it really, this is what help us really future the technologies. So if you want to see really far ahead, normally go for technologies from 1 to 3. If you want to see something that is going to happen in the near future, we go to 7 to 9, for example. But what it's also cool to highlight is that many times of course, the TRL says a lot because it tells how the technologies is in the present moment. But it's even more interesting to see how fast is it going, so the speed of it, because sometimes the technology is on TRL 5 but it goes to TRL 9 pretty quickly. We are seeing now, for example, even with biotechnology that it's being implemented on vaccines, for example, this is happening like really fast. So even more interesting than understanding how ready a technology is, the speed of it is also incredible data for us to also analyze.
Okay, so here it comes for the sustainability impact. So how can we evaluate the sustainable impact related to a technological object? So, okay, so we can move. Okay, so for the sustainability impact, we take into consideration 4 different vectors, which is economical, ecological, social, and political. These vectors, they help us create a way of seeing how these technologies, they will have a positive or a negative impact depending on these 4 different vectors. So we can move. Okay. So thinking about the technologies you have chosen, how would you rate the sustainability impact of your chosen technology? The vertical farm. You can use the social impact, the economical impact, environmental impact, positive, negative, very positive. Okay, very, okay. Interesting. Getting some negative views. More positive than negative. It's really good. Okay. So good to see how the metrics change. They are changing all the time. Okay, I think we can move forward. So as we could see, we had more positive views on related to that specific technological object. So here we explain a bit how we use these, how we see these vectors. So the economical vector, it's related to how technologies, they can bring new forms of regenerate the economy and the environment and affair and systems thinking. These 3, they are very different, and thinking about the economy, it's all of them, they relate and thinking about different ways. So then we have the ecological, which takes into consideration the natural resources usage, the climate change, and the conservation of biodiversity, social equality, welfare, capacity development. And then we have political, which is accessibility, empowerment, transparency, and accountability.
It's also nice to highlight here that we have developed this metric alongside GIZ, so with a panel of specialists, experts on sustainability. And they were the ones, and this metric is crowdsourced, which means everybody has access, everybody which is from the sustainability layers at GIZ have access to the survey tool, and they can vote on the technologies as they see in their radar. So this is crowdsourced with experts from all these views, and we also have been doing that with other expertise as well every time we create a new metric.
Also, it is important to highlight that if you could go back a bit on that, it is important to highlight that those vectors, they are goals which we want to reach, that we potentially want to reach at some point. So if a technology, for example, has more economical impact, it's likely that these technological objects will have more relation to these goals. So it is easier to use these. It is easier to connect this technological object with the tools that we can find within this vector. So, okay.
Let's see it's in practice then.
Yes.
What I will do here, Lau, I'm hanking the technologies, so we can hank them through TRL, but we can also rank them through their sustainability impact overall.
I think we can use the
Yeah,
I think we should use the sustainability impact because it is the last metric that we talked about right now. Maybe it will be more. Everybody will have this fresher in their minds. Okay.
So these technologies here, they have the higher impact, positive impact on ecological systems. So all these technologies are the best ranked technologies from the GIZ radar, and these here are the lowest ones. Sometimes they have a negative impact on ecological systems. We can also do this via economical impact. So these ones were the best ranked technologies, and these ones, sometimes they are negative impact. Sometimes they have also neutral impact. In here, you can also check the average and the percentages of people which voted for each one of these technologies. What is interesting is that this is part of a bigger project we have been developing with GIZ. So we have created for them a lot of other radars like these ones. So that one was a gender one. This one is the gender one. And I don't think it's loading quickly because we have a new version of it. And I don't have, maybe you have the link, Laura, but I guess you can have an insight.
I will have a look if I can find this other link. I believe it's the same link you have, but no.
Would you like to go back to the presentation?
Yes, we can. That would be great. That would be great use. Okay. So what else do we use to analyze these technologies besides the TRL and the sustainability impact? So we take into account local metrics, personalized metrics, tax systems. What are all these? The local metrics is a type of assessment that we use to take into account the local demands and needs located at specific places. So it means that we take into account geopolitical, geosocial conditions and aspects related to a specific place, because technologies, they don't merely, behave in the same way everywhere in the globe. Technologies that behave differently depending on your culture and acceptance to technology. They behave differently depending on the way how you want to use this technology and the limitations that one country may have in terms of technological developments and so on. So the personalized metrics, it's personalized by its name. But what we use with this is take into account the aspects given by the client. So what we use, for example, is to take into account the gender impact. So we look at technologies with the different lenses. We look at technologies with a different view, taking into consideration the needs and demands that personalized view requires. And the tax system is a different way at looking at technologies, which instead of clustering the technologies into affinity groups, what we do is to tag them according to small groups. We alongside the clusters that we gather the technologies, we use the tax system to give a deeper view on how these technologies, they behave differently as well.
And it's nice to notice that since we have UNESCO crown here, is that one of our main tag systems is Sustainable Development Goals, which we use the framework of United Nations. So basically our technologies in our database, they are tagged if they could potentially help one goal or another to be achieved. So this is a really nice way for people to capture the technologies that they really want to use.
Yes. And also the expert interviews, it's a very useful tool because our selection, our group of researchers and our group of experts, sometimes they have different views and sometimes we need a specialized view. And what we receive from these experts interview, it's a hands-on perspective on how to manage these technologies. And then we also have the workshops, and that's research. The workshops is something that Thiara is a great person to talk for talking about the workshops. She's very experienced with that and desk research as well, as she held many of these.
So just a quick note on workshops. It's nice to understand that they are not only a way for us to capture and have new ideas and also analyze technologies together with our clients and collaborators, but they are also amazing educational tool. Because we use, for example, yesterday, I held a workshop called Horizons together with Caroline, which is one of our senior researchers. And we together used the radar in a session, partly sci-fi, partly sci-fact, because we use real technologies to invent new futures. So the workshop has this double size, and we really develop like a lot of methodologies for workshops, and it's mainly like this one that we are holding now. I guess it's one of our expertise for sure, because they really make people get in touch with technology and have ideas by themselves, and not only just read the radar, but really interact and make it their own. And desk research is basically secondary data analysis in which our research is conducted.
Okay, so now we arrive to the clusters and narratives, which is my favorite part during the research process. The clustering process, okay, so we can go.
We will open the kitchen.
Yeah, yeah, we will open our kitchen right now.
All right.
Yeah, this is a very good moment. Before we start, I would just contextualize a bit. The clustering process. It's when our team have already created a selection of technologies following the standards already set in the beginning of the project. And the technologies that we have related into affinity groups is how we will create these narratives, these clusters that we call. So to write reliable stories, we look at technologies in different ways. So as I mentioned previously at the beginning of this event, the technologies, they can be clustered in two different ways. So they can be clustered through trends or taxonomically. What you are seeing right now, it's a narrative. So it's not trends, it's not taxonomic, but it's a mix of the two. Why? Because here we are looking at how technologies drive changes, how some major events in our society were driven by technology. So when you look at these texts, they are not mentioning just the impact of how these technologies behave in the future and also in the present, but we look at some events that that our society experienced in very, very considerable ways. So, okay. How do you want to do this exercise, Thiara?
Oh, this part, we don't have exercises, actually. We can jump into the questions, or we can talk a little bit more about this process, because I think this is the part where people have, they make more confusion, I guess, because until now we have a very linear process, because it's just like mapping technologies, analyzing them through very specific metrics. But then this part is a really creative part, Because
Exactly.
actually what we can do with emerging technologies and with a set of emerging technologies is to create an infinite number of trends, of scenarios.
Yes.
So what we do during these sessions, the really creative part, so we normally have more people engaged in these sessions. And the objective of our researchers and writers when they're doing this is to look at all these emerging technologies and see how they come together and what kind of narratives they can create for the future. So, okay, if I see a portable Faraday zone, which is a zone that, which is a something that you can carry and that can make you have privacy, for example, over your phone. So, for example, a pocket that you put your phone and it's not connected to the internet or anything anymore. And what is the connection between this technology and, for example, blockchain digital identification? And then when we create these connections, we start creating narratives for these emerging technologies and creating really new futures and new realities. What we do that also Laura had mentioned is to understand not only how these technologies connect, but also what are the drivers for these changes. So what are the events that we are seeing now that can inspire these technologies to accelerate? So for example, the coronavirus pandemic, it's a huge driver for a lot of emerging technologies. We are probably here now at UNESCO Futures Literacy Summit via Zoom, listening to all, seeing all of you today just because this major event caused some technologies to evolve even faster than they were before. So what we do is to map these breakthrough events and connect them with the emerging technologies we are seeing accelerating. And with that, we create these new narratives. And it's important to also highlight that we do not create predictions. We don't make predictions. What we just describe current events and see in scenarios in the future, multiple ones, multiple futures in plural, that can happen if they also succeed. So it's nice to see that our scenarios, they are never positive or negative. They try to open as many views as possible. This is much what you see here, for example, in the future of cities, that we look at this trend, for example, anthroposcapes, and see what could be the opportunity and the challenge that this could create in ecological systems, in economic systems, political systems, social systems. So for every trend that we have also this broad analysis of things that could go really amazingly and also pretty terrible as well. So that's why also in this part we have normally writers, science fiction writers, sociologists, and people with a lot of different backgrounds to gather their inputs and really put together all these technologies in a new perspective.
This process, every time that we get into this process, it's really it's powerful to have a very diverse team, because when we find ourselves within a team that has different ways of at looking at technologies, we can divide them by movements, and movements seen through different lenses, and how the future that enabled by some current events and the influence of these technologies affected by political, economic, social, and environmental drivers with reflections in the social sphere. How can we measure and how can we create a narrative that emerging technologies have such impactful way of interacting with our reality? So, yeah.
And I guess before we start with questions, I just would like to ask one last question for you guys. 1 second. Let me share my screen again.
Okay. Worried.
People are jumping in again. Thanks, guys.
Fascinating.
Troubled, lazy, mind-blowing, hopeful, bad, worried.
I'm boggling.
Carefully. Cool. In love. Too much tech. Well, let's see about that. So I think we can open to questions now. How about that, Laura? Are you finished?
Yes, I think that would be
Thanks
great.
so much. That was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you all. That was quite fast. I tried my best to be as fast as I could, to not blow your minds with so much information, because I know it's a great amount of data and information, visualization. So any question, that there is no wrong question or anything related. We are curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Super interesting. Do you understand well that research is then mainly done online and reading a lot? It sounds like writing papers or PhDs on every topic you encounter, or how intellectual is it? I remember in the last workshop 2 days ago that you did lay out that we're looking for which patents are being asked for. You have a few sources where you look at, but it's also almost impossible to see everything, of course. That's one question. And the second one is actually hearing everything what you now said. I somewhere miss, I know the emphasis here is on technology, but I also dare to think that sometimes things go differently than you think, because after all, we are humans who are using it. And I somewhere miss the human part of it, but maybe that's covered in the different scenarios, or maybe something like art or creatives, or that was just a feeling which occurred to me.
So I'm sorry, I think I missed your name.
Ilonka.
Ilonka. I guess the Envisioning's thinking is that, like, if we could go, like, we cannot go to the future to ask people what they have been doing, what are they feeling, what are their beliefs. It's almost impossible to really see that. But we believe that if technologies are emerging and they are being invented, and we see they are accelerating their development, we can almost certainly say that they might exist in the future, right? So actually, technology, they are just signals for us. They are not the end of it. They are an inspiration for us to try to see how we as humans will change it and how it might change us, because it's one of the few glimpses of the future we have today. But of course, I completely agree with you that politics can change everything, behavior systems can change everything, and they are a part of our work. However, we put technology in the center of it because it's one of the few things that we are more sure of that it's going to happen in the future.
May I jump in?
Sure.
Okay. There is something that I thank you very much, Ilonka, for mentioning this, because I think there is a common understanding that technology is something separated from humans, but as maybe as a tool or an instrument or an asset. We believe that even if technology starts as a human invention, many may evolve according to external social and political inputs that escape the control of the inventor's hands. So it means that technology affects every aspect of our lives. So how to separate technologies from humans and how to separate humans from technological developments, how to detach the human relationship from technology. Have humans and technology been born at the same time? As we know ourselves, we are creating tools and using these tools to assist our activities. So when I look at a radar and I see so many technologies relating to each other, I don't see just technologies. I see the people who build them. I see the organizations related to these technologies. I see the people involved in their developments. All these technologies, they have a great human factor because technologies are not created by themselves. They don't appear alone. They are highly connected and they are really dependable on how we use them. It's not something separated from us. It's when I look at a radar, I see so many humans involved in all these technologies, and not only the people involved on creating these technologies, but I see the people affected by them as well, positively or negatively, and so on.
If you ever,
thank you for your question. It was really good.
And just the last one, which pops up, like, so I assume you work for clients and you make reports and you deliver scenarios. And can you already look back and see where you got it completely wrong, or where it was spot on, or do you exist long enough to
speak to that a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Given that the first pieces, the first visualizations began as a much more subjective exercise, and they're about a decade old now. I published the first ones in 2011, 2012, and I think the omissions are the most interesting things, as in what wasn't there. And like 2 or 3 things that were definitely not visible to me in 2011 were crypto, as in like the Bitcoin paper came out in 2008, but in 2011, it just wasn't on my radar. As of 2012, of course, it became apparent that it was going to be a big deal. But also drones. Like, I think drones, they grew off the back of the smartphone explosion, like miniaturizing sensors and gyroscopes and things. And in 2011, that just wasn't a thing. But 2012, 2013, that exploded. So I think those omissions, speaking for myself, not collectively, I think they're way more interesting than seeing what was right, because I think you learn more from seeing what you don't, like from knowing what you don't see.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough that we do not make predictions. This is not, we don't have a crystal ball in which we see things and tell clients, this is going to happen in the future. That's not at all what we do. What we do is basically to create tools in which people can imagine new scenarios. And we have these inspirational narratives in which you can also, it leaves you with more questions than answers, really. In like ways to really visualize. So it's kind of impossible for us to be wrong in a way that we don't make the predictions. So we don't say never ever, oh, this is going to happen. This is not our drill yet.
Can I?
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on Ilonka's first question. It was super interesting, and as a designer, I really had like the same idea, the same point of view. And it's interesting. I wanted to ask you, some designer studios, the ones mainly involved with near future studies or speculation, take into account the relationship between user and technology, those objects in general, but they really stress upon and focus on what they call curious rituals, or like unexpected uses of technology, of like technologies used in a different way from what they were designed for. And I was wondering, do you take these into account in any way, maybe like under the radar or like something like that?
Super. This is one of the key things when we look at technology, because we talk about the future of cities, the future of mobility, the future of water. Come on, help me out, Tuha. What else? Citizenship, identity, privacy. So we talk a lot about a lot of subjects because they all evolve with technology. So one of our key exercises is to pick a technology that was born, for example, for use in health, and really look at it and says, okay, but this could also be used in tracing people. So one of our key exercises is to look at technologies and really oversee where else they could escape. A trend is only a trend when it grows from its initial context. That's where we really see that this is something that's really growing and that it's here to stay.
Okay, thanks. So it's like an intellectual exercise you do between yourselves, like or the group or the studio, or it's like it doesn't take into account users or observation, or it's just like a discussion between you.
What we do have is that we have that database in which all of our researchers update on. Every time we create a radar, we update all the emerging technologies that are within them. So it's reviewed by researchers which have experts available if they want to consult something. They have the new TRLs and the history of that TRL account. So it's being really not only scouted many times and updated many times, but seen by many people, editors, reviewers, the clients per se, and many of the features there is actually crowdsourced. For example, the sustainability metric, the gender metric, this is all crowdsourced. So since it's such a subjective matter, we count with the expertise of people in the field to make this analysis.
Yeah, and in terms of user experience, we have a team that they are all the time updating the radar and identifying how these technologies may be displayed in a different way, how the visualization of the radar can change, and to respond to the demands of the people who actually use these tools. So yeah, in terms of user experience, the radar is continually being updated by this team. So yeah. And also our methods, because as we are changing the visualization and changing the design, our methods also change continuously, because this is something that people often question, is how the research process encompass these changes, because also the methodology to encompass technologies, it must follow these changes. So the process must not stagnate in time. It has to keep track of these possible changes.
For example, one thing that we are doing with our methodology, now is to separate all technologies that are, for example, business models, policies, and protocols from the ones who are like hardwares and softwares, and by differentiating techniques / methods from technology domains and technology applications, so we can better track them and really have metrics specific for them. So have metrics specifically for methods instead of having one for all of them.
So Mohammed Fanos is asking if we have an adoption readiness level or an adoption level, and the short answer is we don't. We're looking for good ways of measuring that, and we haven't figured out a comprehensive way of tracking how much, like who's adopting it and where. Because readiness works because it's global, right? You can not have the technology in one region, but it's still available. You can still import it. You can still build it yourself. Whereas adoption is much trickier. It's very geographically sensitive. So the adoption of one type of technology will be very different depending on where you look. So what we're doing is we're open to suggestions for how to do that exhaustively and across the board. And it's probably gonna have to be broken down by geography, if not to say city. I mean, we haven't figured out the granularity of it, but it's definitely a challenge.
Yes,
and hello,
please guys, if you have ideas, email us, because we have been trying. We used to have a metric which was called readiness, which try to analyze this with analyzing, for example, how many dimensions of a technology on Google and on specialized media, etc. But it just we saw that it just didn't work really well. So we decided to use TRL.
And also to that point, I mean, just to add, we've talked about a handful of our metrics, and as you guys are suggesting, there are many other dimensions we could measure the technologies through. And that's very much the intent of this chat, is to understand, well, first to show what we're doing, but also to understand what else we could be doing. Because I think what we're trying to do is we have a finite scope, which is let's track all technologies. And to do that, it's not really a moving target. I mean, it's not changing radically from day to day. It's fairly finite. But then once you have that, and I think we're sort of there, then you can start adding all these dimensions, such as adoption, such as sustainable development, such as, you know, and everything else we're talking. So in many ways, this is an invitation for you guys to bring in suggestions, but also technical, like not only what we could cover, but also how we can do it. Because that's the intent. I mean, we want to have the definitive list of technologies and make sure that it's updated and fresh, but also measurable in every conceivable dimension. Peter is asking if you look at legal and regulatory status. We don't.
Can I ask, do you guys consider yourselves designers?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so as well. But Envisioning, yes. Envisioning is also a design company for sure. All the visualizations are done in-house, and it's every month is a new feature, a new thing that we are creating. So definitely, we are not only a research institute, but for sure a visualization one as well.
Okay,
yeah.
so
go ahead.
Yeah, so you're building on established frameworks. Do you ever put workshops together, like design sprints or whatever, to kind of innovate on your ideas, or what is your technique to generate some of the ideas, some of the fresh ideas, as opposed to just building on like incrementally on older?
We do ideation sessions around the technologies. So I think yesterday we had a hands-on exercise called Horizons, where we took technologies from the research and combined them in order to address existing challenges. That's one approach for how to use the research to solve problems through ideation. But there's also there's a few other ways.
I think the question was about how we develop the visualization per se. So if we have,
so I'm really interested in the facilitation of workshops specifically.
okay, got it.
How you
tool-wise, I think Michelle, you have better insights on that, and Yasmin as well.
I mean, I think, yeah. So like we use them in idea. We use the technologies as building blocks, like Lego bricks, effectively. Where if you combine this and that, you end up with a solution that might address an existing problem. So that's one approach, and we have that packaged. We used to do it in person. Now we do it on Zoom. So to that effect, we do some form of design. Does that answer your question, Mani? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, to an extent. You never sit down with clients pre-COVID. You didn't sit down with clients and kind of have a structured way that you would work with the clients or the users or whatever to generate ideas. I guess that's an extension of David's question earlier on.
Yes, we have.
Yes, we do.
Both in person.
Yeah. Yeah, we have some round tables with the clients to generate ideas and to receive their briefings in terms of what they expect about what is the research we are going to perform. So every time that we work with them, depending on the needs and demands of a specific client, we have a round table with them and we exchange ideas, and then we present we have proposals. We present proposals to them, And then at the end, it's pretty much like a ping pong, because we are performing the research, we provide them feedback, so then they provide us feedback, we provide them with a research piece, and then at the end we have a whole research that it's this ping pong. It goes around, it comes around. It's very constant. It's a very constant relationship with the clients.
How long does that process normally take?
Depends on the project. Depends on the project.
It may be a month, it may be 3 months, but not more than 6 months. Sometimes if we have a research that is on a monthly basis, then we have contracts that go up to 2 years as well. Because it's like on a monthly basis, we give them insights.
So you guys consider yourselves more researchers and strategists than you would designers. That's interesting.
I think design is a transversal skill in the process. So there's the user experience of accessing the research. So our work is often compared to that of a report, which is valid, but it's a non-linear report. So what we do is we want to show, say, complexity or interconnections between the data in the research. And the radar turns out to be the best way that we can create to do that. And the radar itself is both information design and user experience. It's not a technology per se, although it uses technologies, but it's it's more of a transversal skill where we use design to convey the message of the research. We could also export it as a linear PDF, but we know that people just put that in the drawer and don't really read it, whereas the radar generates some type of engagement. So that's one form of design.
Yeah, and Ilonka asked us earlier that it looked like very heavy research and was basically like having a book or so. I just got here. This is the GIZ radar, but in the form of a book. So this is basically like what we do in 2-3 months. So yes, it's a lot of research. If we put it on a book, it's completely different, you see, right? So like this is a piece of research, really. But all the content from the website is it.
Do you understand well that this whole radar work you do, that's basically your private database to make your unique database, and from that you get your material and information for each specific client, basically.
Exactly that. So because the technologies are the same, they're affecting all industries. We can get the technologies that are most impactful for the determined subject or company or problem, and then create scenarios around that. And what we also do is that the radar is not only a report, but it's also a tool for workshops. So, for example, we have a workshop which experiments with gender equality analysis on this technology. So basically, you have a radar, you have technologies that are completely unrelated to gender, and then you have questions and some dynamics in this exercise, so people can think deeper on this dimension that is normally not explicit, right? And we have other workshops in which people can create science fiction and even prototype new products using these emerging technologies on the cards on the table. So I just got a few here. So we also use this on an offline basis. And throughout this year, we have been creating digital workshops as well, since as the one that we have prototyped yesterday, called Horizons. Maybe one or two of you have been there. And this is going to be a major focus for us next year, to create new views and exercises that use the radar really as a tool and not only as a report as well.
Thank you.
Who are the main consumers of your work in terms of consumer segments? I think this is a question for Michelle. Come on, Michelle.
I mean, we work mostly with governments. We do some corporate work. I'd say about a third of our work is corporate and 2/3 is government or public. And on the public side, it's mostly sort of agencies in national governments, but also to some degree transnational things like, say, the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is sort of, they're based in Switzerland, but not really Swiss. So it's mostly public. And but that being said, we want the work to be as accessible and as broadly accessible as possible. And to that effect, we're taking everything we've shown you and sort of repackaging that into hopefully a more usable format. So the radar, I think, works as a snapshot of what's going on right now. It tells you how ready things are, how impactful they are. It's not a great place to come back to and see what changed. It's more of an encyclopedia than it is a newspaper. And we're also building the newspaper now. So, which is sort of, we're building these portal style linear frameworks, something which Alex and Laura, who are online, will sort of help us lead, which is how do you tell an ongoing story of what's going on, say sustainable development. So unlike the radar, which you check out, you spend an hour on it, you immerse yourself in it, but then there's little reason to come back to it because it's really hard to tell what changed. These linear interfaces we're building, these portal style interfaces, I think they're going to allow people to have, it's going to be more of a destination and more of an update or stream or feed of things going on. And that relates directly to your question about who's using it, because with that, we hope that we can find a broader base of users who are tracking their favorite technology or areas of interest. It's also one of the reasons we did cities. So Envisioning Cities, which you can link to, is this attempt at building a community of practice around a shared area of interest. So we picked cities because it's sort of non-competitive. So you can have people, you can have the urban innovation team from Barcelona working alongside Rio, working alongside Moscow, because they're not competing amongst each other. Unlike, say, if you do the future of food or the future of healthcare, where you have conflict of interest. So long story short, we're trying to broaden our base. We're trying to make it even more accessible. We know the technologies are reliable, but we also know they're not necessarily approachable. It is an opaque piece of information to some people. So yeah, mostly governments, but in time, everyone else.
Heather asked if we have like abbreviated version of the project, like a one-pager. I don't think so. We usually like have a presentation of it, right?
We are the one-page summary.
University futures. How do you, so Peter, how do you define university futures? Like what encompasses the world of universities to you? You can answer in the chat, I guess.
Do you actively pursue clients or do they tend to find you? Peter is very engaged. We should ask him in.
How can you stretch these university futures? Yeah, I would love to see that too. I would love to see these introducing any higher education systems, and yeah, because I think especially in academic environments, there is philosophy and many other fields in academic environments, there is this common fear of technology in general. But yeah, I mean, if we do have a signature in which people can actually be educated about how to understand and stress the future, and for professionals and future professionals or academic people, I think that would be very useful. We'd love to see that too.
Yeah, it has tremendous potential, both in plotting the skill sets of learners in the institution and also looking at the expertise present at different institutions and research groups within them. You could use this tool to help identify people to be networking and collaborating with. There's so much potential here. It's absolutely thrilling.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And if you'd like to see my thinking on university futures, I have a piece that's coming out in the current issue of World Futures Review.
Oh, nice. Can you,
Let's talk further.
Is there a link to share yet, or is it still going live?
Last time I checked, the DOI wasn't quite live yet, but if you're inside of Sage, it's in the latest issue, the World Futures Review.
Nice, congrats.
Foresight.
So Fernanda is asking how our methodology aligns with futures literacy, and if there's an initiative around it. So the initiative is right here, right now. This is what you're part of. This is our attempt at joining forces with UNESCO, and it's a partnership. I mean, we were offered the opportunity to partake in the summit, and we tried making the most of it by putting together this sort of side festival. If this were a festival, we would have our own tent, so to speak, and this is where you're at. And but sort of largely speaking, the idea of futures literacy really matches what we've been trying to do for a decade. I mean, we've called it a bunch of other things. We call it technology thinking. It's had several names before aligning under the umbrella of futures literacy. And so we feel that what UNESCO is trying to do and what Real Miller is trying to achieve closely mirrors what we've been trying to do. I mean, we've been looking at technology particularly, but it's about the future in general. And they too are looking at the future in general. They're looking at sort of deconstructing the certainties of the present. And to do that, you need tools, you need frameworks, you need sessions, training, you need to broaden the scope. So we felt as if this was a great opportunity to really sort of put our best work out there and see what happens. And you guys are such a big part of it because you're here like spending your, what is it, Friday, listening to us and learning and asking questions. So we couldn't have asked for more than this.
Yes. And I just would like to also, Michelle, if you could help me out here with the link for our sign up, because I'm sure we have a very, very precise and amazing crowd today. So if you're would like to check out our sign us page, we are looking for talent, both for our research team, but also for our business development team. So I know this is a great crowd to share this link as well.
Yeah, I'll post a link to our sign up page. Meanwhile, Fernanda's asking about Teach the Future. Is that Sohail Inyatula's thing? His course? No? Okay, then I'm missed. There are so many, I call it future fatigue. There are so many futures initiatives, especially this week, that I don't even know where to start. So Peter Bishop, yeah, he's also part of the literacy team. Yeah. Thanks. And I'm gonna get the join us page. Any more outstanding questions?
If I may add something about how it's related. I started working with Envisioning about 2 years ago, and in the previous session, I said the same thing. When the onboarding process was really empathic, so I could navigate through this, through the way they explained how to research. So we have somehow a unified way to look at things, but different at the same time. So the onboarding process also, I think it's part of the futures literacy, because they taught me how to evaluate certain things that the way I researched before was not included. So it's an open page, right? Okay, I think I can share the link here.
And I'm super happy to see Alex here because she's our new editor.
Yes, true. Welcome, Alex.
Welcome, Alex.
Thank you. I couldn't really have joined in a better week than this summit. An incredible introduction to the, specifically to envisioning, but also to the concepts of future literacy as well. And I did really like, and there was something Ilonka said earlier about the kind of the culmination of some of these research projects. I've worked on one already kind of as part of my onboarding, and I honestly thought I'd done more work in preparation of that document than I did in my whole MSc. So yeah, there's something about it. It's like, it's very similar. The huge amount of work that goes into it, and yeah, the team overall are, kind of the talent and the experience of this team and their fluency in these topics is very inspiring to me. So yeah, it's an incredible organization to be part of. So thank you.
Thank you. We're so happy to have you.
Yes. So do you have any further questions? Anything you want to add? It's we still want to hear from you.
So this is Shazad from calling in from Paris, and I just want to give my compliments to the work and this workshop. I've attended a few of the others this week. I'm very impressed with the work you're doing, and I believe that there is a huge potential in this tool. I'm looking forward to see more of your work in the future, and also possibly to look for bilateral engagements. So I may contact you in the coming time. So thank you very much.
Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to have you here and great to share our research process, which is sometimes really hard, but really it's something that accomplishes us every time that we start a new project. It's very exciting. Every time we start a new project is this feeling of, yes, we are starting something new, and it happens very often. So getting excited every time of the year. So yeah.
Yes, that's so it.
Yes.
Also, I put our contact info in the comments, and you can save the whole chat if you want from the conversation. So there's some links there for you.
Yeah, and you're going to hear more of us. I mean, to us, this whole week has been such a massive learning experience. We've always wanted to do more of this. And this, again, like the UNESCO thing came as such an opportunity that we want to do a lot more of it next year. So we have your email addresses, and we're going to reach out. We'll be in contact with more of these.
Can I just slip in with one last question? In terms of resources, say I'm a complete newbie, which I am, in this field, and I'm very interested in it. What 5 top resources would you recommend that I go and watch or read?
This is a very broad question, because in terms of resources, you can read, I don't know, Space Lords, science fiction novel, or you can start reading Wired. I mean, I know, if I'm not wrong, I think we have a repository of science fiction references, but as in
I passed the link from our website, envisioning.io/methodology. We have our bookshelf there, and it's books by Thiara and Michelle. They share some of their books. You can find there.
Literally mine and in Michelle's bookshelf, like copy paste, right, Michelle?
Pretty much, yeah. It's behind me here, but, yeah, it's also digitally there. Yes, Ilonka?
Because I recently, as I'm reading a lot as well, and I recently finished that's Otto Scharmer's Leading from the Emerging Future. And actually that clicked something. I can really recommend reading it, although it's part of a much bigger movement and theories if you're interested. But what it says there, it gives actually the basis also on future economies and and societies which are probably still to evolve and which are still here and based on history. And I think that was so crucial for any envisioning and any future foresight to put those two together. And that's maybe also, that's where my question came in from. How can it be all technologies? Because we are at the end also living our daily lives and we have certain societal structures. So I can really recommend, in addition to probably all exciting sci-fi literature, to read that as well, because it gives a complete scope of where any foresight has to land.
I'm gonna build on that a little bit. Like, to me, the best sci-fi is the least credible one. I mean, like, the stuff that sounds incredible at the time tends to be more right than what seems like an extrapolation of the present. So something that comes to mind, something I love, is Transmetropolitan. It's 25 years old, Warren Ellis. It's a comic, it's a series of comic books. And to me, like, that's what, like, they got the zeitgeist of today, of the chaotic, messy, dirty, transhuman future we're moving in towards. There's even a Trump character 25 years ago. And I think so, but I think the generalization is science fiction that seems incredible or unbelievable tends to come true more often than not. It's the same. I mean, there are futurist movements like post-normal futures, who talks about that the future is not an extrapolation of the present. I think all of that goes hand in hand with accepting that it's going to get much messier. And as much as I like the Star Trek: The Next Generation, like the clean post financial future where everyone's equal, that's the one we aspire to. But the future we're ending up with tends to be dirtier and messier than that, if that makes sense.
And way more complex, because sometimes that we actually really in reality, we have so many sci-fi references already existing amid our daily basis. So it's really hard to actually define what are the best references in those terms.
Okay, so beyond sci-fi, what are a good academic text to start with? Like maybe three.
I have one suggestion. There is this writer called Tom Lombardo. He's a great reference of relating emerging technology, science fiction, and yes, it's really good. I will write the name here, Tom Lombardo. Yes.
Oh, and I'm being reminded here of connections. So James Burke in the 70s, he wrote a book or two and directed 3 TV series on BBC called Connections. That's absolutely unmissable. It's not sci-fi, but it's like the history of technology and science. Also, The Day the Universe Changed. I'll drop the text. I'll drop the notes in the chat. But The Day the Universe Changed and Connections by James Burke are absolutely unmissable. If you want to understand the relationship between like what happens in science and how society responds to it and how everything is impossibly connected, nothing beats that to this day. There's Connections on Netflix nowadays, which is fun, but it's like it doesn't even hold a candle to Connections. Connected is the new one. Connections is the good one. Yeah. Thanks, Arthur.
Thank you very much, guys.
You can find on YouTube, James Burke Connections.
Yeah. James Burke. And I'm dropping the link to the post-normal future studies. They have a paper, which to me, I mean, they didn't talk about COVID, but they said what was going to happen if COVID struck. In other words, which is the whole thing about nonlinear futures.
Thank you.
So is there any other questions? No? So I think we can wrap up for now. And
yeah, thanks.
We would like to thank everybody and
thanks so much.
See you soon.
See you around. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you.
Or morning or day or evening, wherever you are. Bye.